Okay, today we're going to look at using fraction equivalence to investigate decimal numbers on the place value chart expressed in different units. So we'll see here with our first one, we have some area models to represent 250 hundredths, and then complete the number sentences below. Okay, now one of the things you'll notice is that when we look at our area models here, they've actually been divided up into tenths, and you'll see that's the first thing that we'll need to take a look at. So knowing what you know about equivalent fractions, okay, we can think about 250 hundredths needs to equal some number of tenths. So now we know that 100 divided by 10 is 10. So then we divide 250 by 10. So 250 divided by 10 gets us 25. Okay, so we're dividing the numerator and the denominator by 10. Okay, so then now we can see from our fraction here that 25 tenths would be the equivalence. So now coming down to our area models, okay, we can see that we're going to shade in. Okay, there's 10 tenths. And then there's our 20 tenths. Okay, so here is one whole. Here is another whole. And we have shaded in 10 tenths. Then another 10 tenths. Okay, and then we just need to shade in 5 more tenths. So we'll see that this is 5 tenths. And so that's how we can demonstrate our 25 tenths. Now when we come up here to look at converting it now into ones, we can see that we've shaded in 2 ones and then 5 more tenths. So now 250 hundredths equals 25 tenths, which equals 2 ones and 5 tenths. And then written as a decimal would look like that. Now looking at part B, we need to explain how we determined our answer in part A. Okay. So first, we know that 250 hundredths equals 25 tenths. So we shaded 25 tenths. Then I see that 2 ones are shaded, and 5 tenths. Okay. Feel free to hit pause right now if you need to finish copying that down. But we'll move on to question 2. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our number discs to represent the following decomposition. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at 2 ones and thinking about how many tenths that would equal. So we're going to draw our number discs to demonstrate our 2 ones. Now remember, we're decomposing, so it means we're breaking them apart. So each one is then going to get represented by 10 tenths. And then we do the same thing with this one. Now again, I'm keeping mine into rows of 5 just so it's easier to keep track of. So you can see now that our 2 ones have been turned into 20 tenths. And moving on to the next one. Now we have 2 tenths to start with. Okay, and we need to decompose that into hundredths. So again, we're going to make 10 of these for each tenth. So now we can see that our 2 tenths equals 20 hundredths. Okay, now we're going to get to some mixed units here. So for our next one, we're going to have 1, 1, and then 3 tenths. So we need to know now how many total tenths this would be. So now we need to take our 1, 1 and decompose that. Okay, and now you can see we have a total of 13 tenths. Okay. Moving on to the next one, we have 2 tenths and 3 hundredths. Okay, and we're going to decompose our tenths into hundredths. Okay, so again we're going to make 10 hundredths for each of our tenths. Okay, so you can see now that we have 10, 20, and then our 3 to get us 23 hundredths. Okay, alright, now let's move away from our place value chart, and now let's just decompose the units to represent each number as tenths. Okay, so this is 1, so we know that 10 tenths equals 1. Okay, so we can see that right here, 10 tenths equals 1. Moving on to the next one, well, if 1 equals 10 tenths, 2 would be double that amount, which gets us 20 tenths. Now we have 1 and 7 tenths. Well, from A, I know that 1 is 10 tenths plus 7 more tenths. So that gets us 17 tenths. Okay. Now letter D, again connecting it to what we have with B. If I know 2 is 20 tenths, then I just add 9 more tenths to that. Okay. Okay, now it gets a little bit different. Okay, because now we have 10. Now I know that 1 is 10 tenths, and I'm going to have 10 of those. So 10 equals 100 tenths. So I have 100 tenths plus 7 more. So 10 and 7 tenths is actually 107 tenths. Okay, same thing over here with 20 and 9 tenths. Okay, so you know that 20 is 200 tenths. So we end up with a total of 209 tenths. Okay, moving on to step 4. We're going to decompose the units to represent each number as hundredths this time. So we're going to move from tenths over to hundredths. Okay, so again, thinking about fractions, we know that 1 is 100 hundredths. We want to think about it like a fraction. Okay, well then that means 2 is 200 hundredths. Okay, because we have twice as many. Now, 1 and 7 tenths. So now again, going back to what we know over here, 1 is 100 hundredths, but then we have 7 tenths. So we have our 100 hundredths, then we have 70 hundredths. Okay, because 7 tenths is 70 hundredths. So here we have 170 hundredths. Okay, now same thing here. We know that 2 is 200 hundredths. Okay, and then 9 tenths equals 90 hundredths. So then now we can see that our answer here is 290 hundredths. Okay, moving on, we have the same 10 and 7 hundredths. Okay, so again, 1 is 100 hundredths. So 10 is going to be 10 times that. So 10 actually equals 1,000 hundredths. So we're going to actually do 1,000 hundredths plus 70 hundredths. Okay. So our final answer here then becomes 1,070 hundredths. Okay, and the same thing over here with 20 and 9 tenths. We have 2,000 hundredths plus 90 hundredths. Okay, so you can see our answer now is 2,090 hundredths. Okay, I'll write that a little bit larger so we can see it. 2,090 hundredths. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky here when we get to the hundredths. Okay, so just be very careful with that. And go back to the fractions if you need to. So now let's take a look at the chart here on question 5. Okay, so what we're basically going to be doing is starting off with a decimal, turning it into a mixed number, then turning it into tenths, and then showing it as hundredths. So you can see our 2 and 1 tenth is a mixed number. Well, that's 21 tenths, and then 210 hundredths. So remember, we're just kind of placing a 0 as we go from tenths to the hundredths. So now our next one, we have 4 and 2 tenths. Okay, so that would be 42 tenths. Okay, you have 10 tenths in 1, so we have 42 tenths. And then written as a fraction would look like that. Okay, now we're going to move one spot over, and thinking back to what we did in question 2 when we were decomposing with our number discs, remember we're moving them over a spot, so now our 42 tenths becomes 420 hundredths. Okay. Okay, so then next we have 8 and 4 tenths, which is 84 tenths in unit form and fraction form. And then that gets us 840 hundredths. Okay. And then moving on to the next one, we have 10 and 2 tenths. Okay, which is 102 tenths. And then 1,020 hundredths. To try to write small here to get it all in. Okay. Okay, and then finally the last one, we have 75 and 5 tenths, which is 75 ones. So then it becomes 755 tenths. Okay, and then moving one spot over, we're going to be pushing another 0 out there. So now we have 7,550 hundredths. Okay, so that's how we're moving from place to place. The tenths are usually a little bit easier, so just be very careful when you get over to those hundredths and just moving a spot over, putting a 0 at the end of the number. Okay, so thank you for watching. Go ahead and start your exit ticket. Remember that after this, we have a quiz. So go back and make sure you study. Thank you.